Hi everyone. This is Power Platform Governance, the bare minimum. A session around if you haven't looked into Power Platform Governance at all, you're just starting out, then these are my recommendations and tips for starting what you should know at least to start with a Power Platform Governance journey. Before we start, I'm Michael. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm from Germany. And I'm coming from the business or M365 side of the Power Platform, so I'm not a Dynamics kind of person. And I specialized in governance, administration, and licensing, which for me are the fun topics. Don't know really why, but I really love it. I work as a solution architect at Avanade, and I'm also a freelancer at www.thepoweraddicts.com. So just swing by, and if you are curious of what this is. And beside from governance, I do have some online hobbies that are plants. My background is blurred, so you can't see, but actually this side over here is all plants. It's just very green apartment. As I mentioned before, a couple of minutes before, I go camping a lot, and I really like that. And I like board games. Now, when I'm thinking of it, board games, I do like to read rule books. Maybe that's the reason why I like governance, like reading rules and regulations. That's kind of my thing. On the right-hand side, you can see my credentials for the socials. I'm on Twitter or X, LinkedIn, and I have my own blog at michaelroth42.com. And my freelance job is around thepowerplatform.com. But okay, enough about me. Let's start right into the agenda because we have a packed schedule for today. And I thought about let's make a different agenda by just listing topics. But I made a little graph that we can use when it comes to Power Platform governance, and it's centered around complexity and the amount of users. So at the very beginning, you have a few must-have topics, and those must-have topics that you really must look into is the tenant settings in general and your default environment, because you won't get rid of either. Then you have some should-have topics, which are really must-haves as well, but it sounds cooler, must-have, should-have, could-have. So, and that are the environments and the DLPs, and those get more important the more amount of users you have. If you're just 5 or 10 users, then you don't really need to look that much into different environments. But anyway, this is still important. And the last one is could have, and that could be really useful. That is monitoring. If you have a lot of users, then it would make a lot of sense to monitor what's going on in the Power Platform. And once again, I'm talking about the bare minimum here. I'm not going into every topic in detail because I think every topic could even be a session on its own. And as promised in this bare minimum 2024 edition, I do have a Copilot chapter because Copilot is a lot. There are a lot of Copilots, and the governance around that is kind of, let's call it interesting. All right, something to keep in the head of your back, please, would be processes, because governance and regulations and what kind of settings you have are cool, but you really need to know about the processes in your company or place where you use the Power Platform. So this will become later on. This will become important later on. So keep it in the back of your head. And I would start now with tenant settings, then default environment, environments, DLPs, monitoring, at the very end, Copilot chapter. So let's dive into tenant settings, and we have 3 very important settings that we need to look into. That is limit environment creation and add-on assignments. Because if you don't do that, everyone can create new environments or add-on assignments, which is nice in general. But if you are the administrator in the company and everyone can create environments and assignments, then you will have a wide spread of basically environments and you don't know what's going on in your platform and in your tenant. And you probably want to avoid that. Then the concept of self-service and tenant isolation. I rarely see those at my customers, which kind of is surprising to me, but that's why I'm here to guide you through. So first thing, limit environment creation and add-on assignments. That's fairly easy. We hop over to the Power Platform Admin Center and click on settings. We just saw that in the session before, if you joined. And there are 4 points: the developer environment assignments, production environment, trial environments, and the add-on capacity assignments. And you can just click on those and limit those to everyone can create those to only specific admins. And that means the system administrator, the Power Platform administrator, that are people who can create new environments. That is a very, very important context right at the very beginning, I just recently had a customer, and they had an amount of environments, 17,000 roundabout, which is quite a lot, and you get lost there easily. So if you want to know and be ahead of what's going on in your tenant, you should limit those to administrators, just to keep yourself in the game, to know what's going on. Very important. The next one is the self-service concept. And the self-service concept is practically that user can purchase their own Power Platform license online and use it in your own tenant. So that means I'm working at Avanade, and Avanade, let's say, doesn't want to give me a premium license. I can just buy one myself with my own credit card and use it in my Avanade tenant, which makes sense from a Microsoft point of view, because they are selling more licenses. But for me, as an administrator, this is basically a shut up and take my money moment. So self-service. I recommend every customer and everyone who uses Power Platform to switch this off. And I will just show you now, first of all, how to detect those if you have self-service licenses, because this is a special kind of license, and how to switch it off then. And this is really the most complicated part of this whole session. So we are going to delve into PowerShell, but I will guide you through. So if you have no experience in that, it is not easy, but it's manageable. So self-service licenses. We are in the M365 Admin Center, not the Power Platform Admin Center. And we go to billing your products, and then you get all the licenses that you have in your tenant product. And on the very right-hand side, we have 5 filters pre-selected. This is the default when you go into the admin center. And at the very bottom, you can see self-service. If you click that, then you can see all licenses that are self-serviced. That means user that bought the license on their own and using it in your tenant. That's how you detect them. But you have to be global admin, global reader, or billing admin. So if you are neither of those roles, just contact those people in your organization and ask them if they are aware of this and look at it. Now, what we can do about those self-service licenses is we can disable this functionality or this feature. And this works only with PowerShell. So I'm guiding you through now, and I'm showing you screenshots of the PowerShell process. Let's see here. What we do first, we install a module called MS Commerce. This basically is a PowerShell module that is hosted in the PowerShell Gallery from Microsoft. So this is a safe and tested module that we can use. And what I do with all those PowerShell slides now, I include the commandlet that you will need underneath. So if you get my slides later on, then you can just copy paste those out of the slides and use it in PowerShell. If you do that, if you install the module, then the first thing that you need to do is to connect to this module. This is connect/-MS Commerce, and then you get asked to sign in. Give your credentials, and then you're good to go. So the next thing we need is we need to have a list of all those services that allow self-service. And this is this command that up here. We get all the MS Commerce product policies, and we filter for all those products that allow self-service purchases. And if you do that, you will get a list. And this is how the list looks as of now. You can see on the right-hand side policy value, I've disabled already a few, but per default, everything is enabled. So every user can buy themselves a Power Automate per user license, or Power BI Pro, or Power Automate RPA. This is all pretty much possible. And I tend to disable lots of those because I, once again, want to see what's going on in my tenant, and I want to have like a process, like a approval process on that. So this is a really complicated, or not complicated, but a little bit complex part, where we can say how to disable those. This is a commandlet, which basically starts the same way as the one before. We update our MS Commerce product policies, filter for every product that allows self-service purchase, and then we give in the product ID that we want to disable. So CFQ7TTCOH9MP is obviously Power BI Pro. I guess you all know that. And we set the value to disabled. If you don't know the product policy, the product IDs by heart, then you can use this commandlet and go for the product name and match Power BI Pro right here. You can just write it down what you want to disable. And when we do that, what happens, we can see here our result Power BI Pro, then the product ID allows self-service purchase is disabled, and this was a success. You can do that for every product that you just seen in the list, or you could use this command that basically disables everything, which quite makes sense. And this is how you first detect and then disable those self-service purchases. It makes a lot of sense. So if they aren't enabled or if they aren't disabled, check your M365 Admin Center and see if you have any of those licenses, just to see what's going on. Once again, Microsoft enables those per default, and it could be that you have some of those in your tenant, but if you want to stay ahead of the game, then check for them and maybe disable if you need to disable. The second really important thing or the third basically, is tenant isolation. And tenant isolation is a little bit complex as well. That basically is tenant isolation, just as I've written down here, allows admins to effectively govern the movement of tenant data from Azure AD to and from their tenant. And I'm going to walk you through what that basically means, because the default, it's switched off, and that means tenant isolation is switched off. That means your tenant is not isolated, and your tenant can and will communicate to other sources outside of your tenant as well. And that is especially important for Power Platform Canvas apps and Power Automate flows. If you switch it on or off, it takes a while, around about an hour, that when you set up new policies. But I realized that what does it mean when your tenant sends data outside of your Azure and inside from your Azure? What does it mean? So I have a little graphic that makes it a little bit easier, I hope. So at the bottom here, we have our tenant. It's very authentic. It's not Contoso, it's Constoso. Little typo here. And inside our Azure tenant here, there we have the AD or Entra, we have Teams, we have our data lakes, and basically every architect and service that we purchase, we have it in here. Then, especially with the Power Platform on all the connectors, we have third-party connectors like Gmail, Dropbox, Asana, and also Adobe Sign, which I see very often. Now, let's imagine for quite a moment that we have some really, really important and high valuable data in our tenant. Let's say we have our favorite cakes recipe. That's a PDF. And I want to use Power Automate to get it signed by Adobe and then put it on SharePoint. That's a pretty basic flow. We will send it to Adobe Sign, get a digital signature, and then we place it on SharePoint. So what we have now, on the right-hand side, we have the outbound connection from our Power Automate service to this external service, Adobe Sign, and this one signs the file, and sends it back into our tenant. This is the inbound connection. What happens when you do that is you create a cross-tenant connection to Adobe Sign. We can see that now in our tenant, which is absolutely fine, but you have to be aware of it. Now, what could happen? Let's put all these connectors aside for a moment, and let's assume we have a very capable and good-looking man outside of your tenant. Let's pretend this is him, and he has his own tenant, his private tenant, michaelroth42.com. This is my tenant, and I have Power Automate as well, and I want to establish a connection from my personal Power Automate to your SharePoint. Then I get asked to present my credentials and to sign in. And there are many reasons I could have those credentials to your tenant. Maybe I work at your company. Maybe I'm a consultant and you gave me a guest account that you, let's say, forget to disable at the end. Maybe I'm a freelancer and I work from time to time in your tenant. Or maybe just I got somehow the credentials from some other employee at your company. Then I can do that. And then I get the favorite cakes PDF. Once again, we have the inbound and outbound connection. So basically what we see here from an outside source, like from my very own private tenant, I can create a flow that creates an inbound connection and an outbound connection back to my SharePoint. That means someone from the outside can connect to your tenant and retrieve data from your SharePoint. Once again, this is a cross-tenant connection, so get listed in your tenants. So we have not only Adobe Sign cross-tenant connection, but also the one to my tenant as well, which is really nice, but is really a huge possibility for data leakage. And once again, per default, tenant isolation is switched off. If you switch it on, then those inbound and outbound connections are not possible anymore. The good thing is sometimes you need to connect to outside sources or to third-party devices or third-party services. So you can create new rules and exceptions. So it's not just black and white, switch it on or switch it off, but you can switch it off and then manage exceptions for inbound and outbound connections that are allowed in the Power Platform Admin Center. If you don't know if this is switched on and off, go to the Power Platform Admin Center and check it. It's under policies. Then you can see tenant isolation. Just check it. This is really, really important. And I included a link in a later slide that you can get when you get the slides, where you can read how to create cross-tenant reports, for example, and how this whole thing works. I can't go into detail here because that would be like a whole 45-minute session on its own, but check tenant isolation. This is the third really important thing about the tenant setting that needs to be considered by you. All right, Mark. Yes.
Before jumping to the next topic, there's one question: if tenant isolation hits logic apps as well?
That is a very good question, and I don't know that yet. After the session, I have an hour of time, and I will look into that. I don't think so, because Power Platform works with connectors, and basically those are the connectors. So the Adobe Sign connector is something that goes right through, and it can't be blocked by a DLP either, so a data loss prevention policy. Those connectors, those cross-tenant connections, can't be blocked by any DLP, and that's what makes them so dangerous, basically. But I don't think functions are a concern as well. But I will find this out and give the information out later on. Thanks for that question. All right, the next one that is really a must-have is the default environment, because the default environment is a very special environment. Usually what happens on the default environment is, by a recommendation from Microsoft, most people rename it to personal productivity. And I have experienced that over and over and over again, that people log in and see personal productivity. This is mine to do what I want. This is so nice. So what happens? People try things out. They click here and there, and they accumulate Power Platform artifacts like flows and apps and solutions sometimes. And most of them had the word test in them. So you will gather a lot of things. And this is basically the widespread scenario. Everyone has access. That is the second thing. Like everyone in your tenant, even guest accounts, all the regular accounts, everyone has access to the default environment. And not everyone has all access, but they can share everything with everyone. This is really interesting. You can't even add a security group, for example. If there's an account in your ID, this account has access to the default environment, and this account can share everything with everyone. So what could possibly go wrong, right? This is kind of, I do have issues with that with Microsoft, that they really allow everything to happen in default environment, and that they even recommend you to rename it to personal productivity. That can be dangerous. But at least you would say, if everyone has access to everything, doesn't matter, because if there is something important in default, we already have backups, right? No backups in default. And this is the number one reason why you should be really careful about the default environment. There are no backups there. No chance. If someone deletes something important, it's gone for good. So I think this is something that needs to be known, well known, about the default environment. So my question, and this is a question that I have, and I don't have a proper answer, is how to use the default environment. I sometimes see people who say that's perfect for productivity apps and flows that really serve everybody. That means move that attachment from Outlook to SharePoint or notify the Teams channel, something like that. That can be beneficial for everyone for its own productivity, and that makes sense. The other point is where we could say all Power Platform artifacts that you have, let it be flows or apps or dashboards or whatsoever you have, that for broad audience. And quite often I see that that are use cases coming from HR. Like you have those digital forms for sick notes, a company car form, holiday requests, all these kind of things. That make perfect sense to live in the default environment. But then there's still the backup problem. So you have to establish something if you have really important stuff in the default environment, where you have to create some kind of backup that if you don't want to lose that. So I'm not really a huge fan of the default environment, and I think it's really a problem how Microsoft treats it. So what to do? And I'm starting this off now because I don't want to stare at it the whole time to see how can I use the default environment. So how to secure it? First thing, it is a good idea to rename it, or I don't know. It really depends on your company and your organizational culture. But please don't name it personal productivity, because most people will think this is mine. I can do whatever I want here. That is not what I want my users to do in the default environment. If you want to take it up a notch, you can limit sharing with everyone. And I've included a link later on where with a tutorial to guide you through how to limit sharing with everyone in default environment. A little bit more clever would be to use a very restrictive DLP, and that includes new connectors and custom connectors as well. You can do that. You can't block any connector. The standard Microsoft connectors, like the Office products and Dataverse, for example, can't be blocked. But please, I beg you, block every connector that you can, because the default environment is a horrible environment, especially for the no backups. And if you want to be the best Power Platform admin that there is out there, you can monitor for artifacts that are still created in default environment, and just send a notification to your user. You shouldn't develop Power Platform artifacts in this environment. This is the thing that is really important. Take care about your default environment, because there are a lot of things going on there. But talking about environments, maybe switch on to environments in general. And just a quick reminder, this is a session about the very basics. So if you don't know what environments are a space to store and manage data, apps, flows, and basically every kind of, or any kind of Power Platform artifact. I usually call them big boxes. You have like those boxes where you can put stuff in there, and then they are separated from each other. And a few ideas how to use different environments, or how I see them used in the wild, is for different business units. You always got the default environment, and you can't get rid of it. But if you have an HR department or finance or IT, they can all have their own environment and use it for their stuff. That makes sense, because not everyone in the whole company is allowed to look at HR data. So separate them by environments makes sense. You could even use them for different countries. Would make sense as well, because you usually have different rules, laws, and compliance regulatories in different countries. So to separate them makes sense. Another very common scenario is to use it for development, testing, and production. You might have heard never build in production or never test in production. And this is ALM, application lifecycle management. There's one environment for development, one for testing, and one for production. If you screw up in development, production will be unharmed, and that makes a lot of sense. Now, environments, there's a pretty rare case that Microsoft gives you something how they think you should use environments. So this opinionated guidance is kind of rare for Microsoft, and they call it by the epic name of North Star Architecture for Power Platform, and it looks like this. And usually when I talk to administrators or people who are responsible for the platform, this looks kind of confusing, because there's a lot going on in this graphic here. So I usually break it down and I should say it's absolutely okay if you start building up something for Power Platform, like an environment architecture. It's okay to start over here. So on the left-hand side, you have the default environment, that you don't get rid of that. Little fun fact on the side, Microsoft says you have role assignments here, but that's not really true, because the default environment doesn't work well with security roles. But anyway, You have the default environment, and I usually recommend to start with an administrator productive environment. That is a place where you can install, for example, the Center of Excellence starter kit, or build other artifacts, for example, to monitor the default environment, and so on and so on. This is stuff that is for the IT department, for the administrators that don't belong in the default. When you've done this, you can scale it up a little bit more, and they call it this Industry X productive environment. And that basically means, for example, for your industry, for your business unit, like for HR, for IT, for whatever you have. And then you can build it up and let it grow slowly. And then eventually you might end up here, where you have an administrator, development, test, and production environment, and the same for different industry, business areas, or whatsoever you have. And you then can even take it up with a good ALM approach and use DevOps and a Git repository. You can work with managed solutions. There are different ways, but it's absolutely fine to start out here. The very important point is to start out somewhere. Use environments, because environments are very good to use. Just don't build like 2,000 or 3,000 of them. That will be like too much, maybe. Although Microsoft has a few cool things that are going to be published within the next month that really make it easier to handle a lot of environments. So even this year, environments, you need to take care of those. And then I mentioned those before, and we can see those here, policy assignment, that are basically DLPs. And I've said DLP, the abbreviation before. These are data loss prevention policies. We've even heard that in the session before. Data loss prevention policies, DLPs, are policies that makes it easier to prevent data leakage in different environments. And my recommendation for a Power Platform bare minimum DLP is have exactly one tenant-wide DLP. And I'm not saying have exactly one DLP, but one tenant-wide. And that is very, very important. It's a very important distinction, because users can add environments in different ways, or environments can be added to your tenant in different ways. So maybe you just forgot to disable the feature in the admin center, and then everyone can create a new environment. Or users can get a trial environment, or some other admin, because usually most admins are not on their own, creates environments. Or Copilot can even create environments, which is really fun. But the most important reason why I keep repeating tenant-wide DLPs and that they are important is when users sign into the community program, then they get 3 environments for free, which is really nice and really cool to learn and develop and things. But if you are not aware of this, you might want to know about this, because then you have shady dudes on the internet who tell your users, get 3 environments for free. Just try it out. There's no one who's stopping you. And then once again, you have this widespread of the environments, and you really want to know what's going on in your tenant. So, and the tenant-wide DLP covers all new environments, regardless of the way of creation. Signing into the community program, getting a trial environment, or whatever the way is, the tenant-wide DLP covers every environment whatsoever. So how to do this? We are in the Power Platform Admin Center once again. On the left-hand side, policies, data policies. And by the way, down here is tenant isolation. I talked about this before. This is where the setting is. And then we create a new policy. And when you create a new policy, at some point you come to the point scope. And you have 3 options here. You can add all environments, multiple, or exclude certain environments. And both of these options, add all environments or include certain environments, work. That means wherever a new environment comes from, this DLP will cover it whatsoever. The really important part here is that I said in the beginning, have exactly one tenant-wide. Every customer I work with on a governance project, 100% of customers have multiple tenant-wide DLPs. And if you stack multiple DLPs that are tenant-wide over each other, it gets so confusing to see what is allowed and what is not allowed. Have one. That is the tip. There, I got it. When talking about data loss prevention policies, there's one other thing I'd like to mention. And this is not in the scope, but in the pre-built connector section. So we're jumping a little bit back here. If you create those, you have in the upper right corner this little cogwheel that say set default group. And this is basically that opens this menu here. Whenever the new connector is published by Microsoft, and Microsoft loves to publish new connectors, like every week or so, you can set the default group where this goes in. So every DLP has three kind of areas or buckets: the business bucket, the non-business, and the block bucket, those three here. And you can say per default, every new connector should be blocked, please, like I did here. Because then I don't have to check, like every Friday, are there new connectors? What do they connectors do? Do I want them in my tenant or in my business to be active or not? Then you can do that with be a little bit more relaxed. So this is really, really, really important. DLPs. All right. Now we are coming to the part could have. Must have, should have, could have. Yeah, could have. Last one. So monitoring. And monitoring is an interesting part because there are several ways to monitor. We have seen one in the session before, the usage analytics. That is the report in the Power Platform Admin Center, where you get a lot of insights. This is really valuable, and it became really good in the last year, especially when you enable the tenant-wide analytics, which you can do in the admin center as well. Then you get both a per environment view and a per tenant view, which gives you a lot of information. Really great. Then we do have audit logs, basically activity logging. Works for Power Platform really good, but this is in the Purview Center. Requirements, once again, you need an E5 license or a separate Purview license, and then you can create a monitoring log that monitors all kind of things. Who's opening apps? Who's closing apps? When are they opening apps? What are they doing inside those apps? So you get a lot of details. It's really cool. A lot of possibilities, but the Purview Center is not self-explanatory, so you have to dig into it a little bit. Then you have one of my favorite possibilities, of course, the COE or Center of Excellence Starter Kit with a Power BI report attached, which is basically a third-party tool. It's not originally from Microsoft, but it's kind of, because the Microsoft PowerCat team published that on GitHub. But Microsoft says if you do that, you don't have you are on your own. We are maintaining that and we are updating it every month, but use it on your own. There's no guarantee that it works, and you just. But it's a very cool tool. It's very complex by now. A lot of stuff in there, and you get this is by far the best option to start monitoring Power Platform. And the last one that I have to mention every time I talk about monitoring is our managed environments. This is Microsoft's premium governance feature that got really big in 2023, so last year. And since I got so many requests, what about managed environments? Now I have to talk about it for a bit. So managed environments, kind of monitoring. Basically, there's one requirement that is very important to know. And a managed environment requires every user who wants access to a managed environment to have a premium Power Platform license. So if you have premium licensed user, then you can use managed environments, which is pretty cool. If you don't, then you can't use it. And the benefits of the managed environments, they are growing. Microsoft is publishing lots and lots of new features every other month or so. And the list of what we have right now is quite huge. So there are lots of possibilities with managed environments. I want to show you a few of them, or just talk about a few of them. I think they are most important for administrators, and that would be the limit sharing. It's very easy to limit sharing Power Platform artifacts in managed environment. You can just set a limit. Users are only allowed to share with 5 people, 6, 7, whatever you want. And you can even add if they are allowed to share those with security groups, for example. So this is very easy. You can, of course, you can build something, a feature like that yourself with Power Automate, but it's super easy. It's just one of those benefits that are in there. Then you got the pipelines in Power Platform, which is basically a very easy feature to include ALM, application lifecycle management. So if you want to build a pipeline from developing an application to testing to production, you can do this with the pipelines. This is very user-friendly, and this is the important part because pipelines, other pipelines work with Azure DevOps, for example, and you have a GitHub repository where you can store your backups and stuff, which is not that user-friendly if you don't have a tech or IT background. Pipelines make it really easy. Then you have the solution checker. I think this one is still in preview, but it's great. I hope you know that there are solutions in Power Platform, basically folders where you can put all the stuff in that is for one solution, that is required for one solutions, like your flows, your tables, your security roles, your connections, everything in one neat folder or solution that you can then export and import from different environments to other environments. But you can also download solutions from the interwebs and import them in your tenant. And if a user finds something in the internet and imports it to my tenant, then me as an administrator, I get a little bit cautious and think, okay, what kind of solution is this? And the solution checker gives you the possibility to check if there's, for example, custom code in the solution. And you want to know that, and you can then decide, do you want to give the user a warning, like attention, there's custom code in there, or you can just block it whatsoever. You can say, nope, you can't import solutions if I don't agree and approve this. This is really handy. Then you have the extended backup. Backup usually is for 14 days or something like this. In managed environments, you can extend the backup up to 21 days. So if something gets deleted accidentally, you can recover it for a longer period of time. Then the next one, DLPs for desktop flows. And this is something where I get really angry with Microsoft. I just talked about DLPs, data loss prevention policies, which let you decide which connectors can be used together in one flow, for example. If you want to do this for desktop flows, so in Power Automate Desktop, then it only works in managed environments. And I'm really angry with Microsoft that they put a security and governance features behind this paywall of a managed environment. This is really not okay. But okay, that's a personal opinion. The last thing that is really cool about managed environment is the default environment routing. What's behind this is when you log in as a user to make.powerapps.com or make.powerautomate.com or whatever, then you usually start in the default environment. And many people forget to click the environment picker to pick their own environment that they have, their personal developer environment or the environment that they are allowed to work in. And this default environment routing allows you to say which user should start in which environment. That makes it very user-friendly to start in the correct environment. Especially if you have lots of environments, then this one is really handy. So I see a lot of good features in managed environments recently, and they are coming more and more and more. But on the other hand, I'm a little bit, I don't know, not disappointed, not angry, but Microsoft is really pushing hard that you buy premium license for every user that works with the Power Platform. And that, I don't know how I should think about it. But anyway, managed environments are a thing, and they're super important. And you can do a lot of it. Now, I just saw that there's something wrong. Yeah, I already talked about this. Every user that wants to have access to a managed environment needs a premium license. Now, when it comes to monitoring and managed environments, I do have one recommendation, and that is, drum roll, please, have a good reason. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? Ever so often I get asked by my customers, okay, I want to start monitoring the Power Platform. What do I have to do? Or I want to start using managed environments. What do I have to do? Why and how does it all work? And I always ask, why do you want to monitor, or why do you want to use managed environments? Because usually when I ask, okay, you want to start monitoring your Power Platform, what do you want to monitor? And the answer usually is, everything. And if you monitor everything, then it takes around a week, and your whole capacity is eaten up by monitoring logs. So you really need to think, what do you want to monitor and why? Same for managed environments. Why do you want managed environments? What do you want to use them for? And now we circle back to the very beginning, to the agenda, and look at the processes. Because this is so important. You need to know why you use the Power Platform and what for do you use it. Because then you can decide what to monitor and what to use managed environments for. This one is super important. So processes, it's not the technical part, it's the organizational part. This is really important even in governance. All right, we're coming to the last chapter already, the Copilot chapter. that was my biggest challenge for this presentation and this session, to be honest, because there are so many Copilots now. For a short amount of time, I thought about doing a little test in here. Who can name the product? But I didn't do it, and I just will tell you. So we have those 4 products that usually come up when you talk about Copilots. On the very left-hand side, we have Microsoft Copilot. This is the one that doesn't require a license. This is known as Bing Chat, the one in your Edge browser on the right-hand side. And this is protected if you sign in with an enterprise account. This is one Copilot. Then, of course, we have the other Copilot, the colorful one. This is the Microsoft Copilot for M365. This is the one that requires the $30 user per month license. It's connected to MS Graph. It has access to all the documents, mail, and everything in M365. And it's managed in the Power View portal and the M365 Admin Center. So basically, these two don't have anything to do with Power Platform. But still, a lot of people are confused if they have to do something with Power Platform, if they need to govern that, and if they need to put some effort into that. And then we have, of course, Copilot Studio, the one with an own icon and logo, and I thank Microsoft for that. This one is included in the Copilot for M365. Copilot license, you can buy a standalone license if you want to. This is the art is formerly known as Power Virtual Agents, and where you can create your own Copilots and even extend the Copilot for M365. So these two work very good together. And then we have the last one. This really confused me. We have something that is called, at least in the documentation, AI Copilot. And this is included in the M365 license. And this is the one that helps makers to build apps and flows. If you have an environment, I think currently only in the US, that is based in the US, you can use Copilot to build apps and flows. But these two on the right, Copilot Studio and AI Copilot, don't have anything to do with the Microsoft Copilot or the Microsoft Copilot for M365. I know it's confusing a lot. So let's focus on these two for Power Platform. So what can we do to govern that, to secure that? I would start on the right-hand side with the AI Copilot because that's fairly easy. We have 3 options for that. We can disable Copilot in Power Apps at all. We can disable the feedback that is sent to Microsoft, and we can disable prompt sharing. Again, not with other users, but with Microsoft. For that, once again, we hop over to the Power Platform Admin Center in the settings, and the first 3 options here is disable Copilot for good, just disable the feedback or the data collection. It depends on you what you need. So this part of the presentation is not bare minimum, but just give you a little bit of overview how to govern Copilot altogether. And that's it. That's what we can do. On the other hand, the Copilot Studio, it's a little bit more tricky, and we have a little bit more options for that. And I hope I get everything right. If not, I wish you have to correct me because I know that you are very good with that. So Copilot Studio, we have 3 options as well. We can disable Copilot publishing. We can disable data movement across regions, and we can use a DLP, not as for desktop flows. So this one works as well. When we do that, we can once again pop over to the Admin Center in the settings, and this is just a different thing. Here is publish bots with AI features. And when you look closely, you can say allow Power Virtual Agents. What are virtual agents, you might wonder? So the translation is not up to date, but that is the feature where we can disable to publish Copilots altogether. Then the one with the data movement, disable data movement. That is something that we don't do in the Admin Center, and that depends very much if you need to do that or not. It depends where your Power Platform environment and your Azure OpenAI services are hosted. When your tenant is hosted in Europe, for example, but your Azure OpenAI services are hosted in Sweden or Switzerland, for example, then prompts, as well as the results from the prompts, need to travel across regions. And then you can or must enable or disable it. But Microsoft makes very clear that this data is not used to train, retrain, or improve Azure OpenAI Service Foundation models. So once again, if you need to disable that or not, I've added a link later on that you can see if you have the slides, if you get the slides, to see when you can check where your tenant is hosted, where your Azure OpenAI services are hosted, to see if that is a thing. And the last thing that we could do is DLP. So if we build a DRP, we now have the option to include skills for Copilot. And basically, you can include or exclude skills for different channels. So we have the Microsoft Teams channel, for example, the Omni channel and the Facebook channel. So you can customize a little bit what's possible in your tenant and what's not. In the session before, there was a conversational plugins mentioned. And those plugins, basically what they do is they interact with external systems, which can be great, which is great, but they are not turned on by default. So if you want to use this, you need to activate those. And if you want to govern those plugins, you don't need to do anything because they are deactivated by default. All right. We have one last thing in the admin center, which I think is kind of hilarious. This is Copilot Help Assistance in Power Automate via Bing. And I think it sounds very straightforward. When we read the description, it says allow the Copilot Enhanced Help feature within Power Automate to enhance answers on product documentation through Bing search. So how I read this is I need help with building a Power Automate flow. I can use the Bing search or use Copilot, some kind of Copilot to help me with that. The point is, if you click on the information button within the setting, this leads you straight over to Power Automate desktop. So at this point, I asked Microsoft, what is this for? Is this for Power Automate or Power Automate desktop? Because it's not clear. And I don't got an answer yet. So it's a little bit like, who knows what this does or what this is. Maybe some of you know already, then I would be really grateful for letting me know. But that is that you can do for Copilot. And I think the Copilot governance will be growing in the near future because Microsoft is adding features on and on and on. And those are the 4 to 5 steps that I want you to be aware of if you want to start Power Platform governance. And with that, I say thank you for your attention. Enjoy your day or your evening almost. Are there any questions? I can see Ambush talking, but I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Happens to the best.
Yeah, it could happen, you know. Headphones over the head since all morning. So I think we have questions around the Michael, in terms of the managed environments, main capabilities, benefits, seems of being on the admin side of the house. What kind of overall values would you see being added for the organizations?
Sorry, I was reading the question while you were talking.
Okay, no worries.
What question are you referring to, please?
I think it was from the Power Admin. I don't know the full name, but the question was in terms of the managed environment, main capabilities, benefits seems to being on the admin side of the house. What kind of the overall value would you see to being added for the organization?
Yeah, for the administrators, we do have a few nice features, and that is limit sharing with everyone. And I just saw in the chat that Power Admin as well already linked the part of the documentation where you can do that with PowerShell, which is really great. I would just like to share my screen real quick again to come back to the features of the managed environments. Where are we? Oh, share. Do you see the managed environment features list now?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, good. Okay. So for the administrator, the limit sharing is nice. The weekly usage insights can be nice because this basically sends you a weekly report of what's happening in the environment. You don't want this for all environments, even not for managed environments, but for those who are important Power Platform artifacts, like for business critical applications, for example. This is really good. From a security point of view, the IP firewall and cookie binding is really, really nice. Export data to Azure Application Insights can be really cool to monitor the inside of applications, like where is a user clicking, when and how long does it take. It's basically a heat map for an application, which can be the catalog in Power Platform. I use this quite often actually to make it easier for my users to find the stuff that we already have developed. Otherwise, I get like a ticket every other day. I have a great idea for a Power App. I want this car sharing app for our company. And I always said, yes, we have that already. Please check the catalog. And if you have those applications and those things that are basically for everyone, and you have spread those over to different environments, then it's difficult for the user to see what's already developed in your tenant, what you have. So the catalog really helps with that. Default environment. So from an administrator point of view, I recommend managed environments, especially if you personally don't have to pay for it, but the company does. There are many good reasons, and actually, I just realized why creating and while seeing this list actually that it would be a worthwhile session to talk about managed environments. How you can use them? Because there's even this neat little trick in personal developer environments, for example. They are just for training and developing and learning. They come with a premium license automatically, so you can use premium features there per default. And you can make those personal developer environments managed without needing additional premium license. There are a few little tricks around managed environments that can be really handy, but it would be too much to just put it into this one session. But there are a few cool features for managed environments, in managed environments, especially for administrators. Absolutely, yes. And I just see the question: is there a way to block all users to actually use Power Platform? No, especially not when you have the default environment. You would actually have to blacklist the web pages like make.powerapps.com or something like that, because you can't block the Power Platform and especially the Dataverse connector in default. And one little thing that is really scary is even if you have a user that is non-licensed with an M365 license whatsoever, or you excluded the Power Platform bits from the license, the products from the license, they can log into make.powerapps.com, build an app, and click on play, and all the functionality that they built in there that works. They don't have a license, but it still works. They can't save this app, and they can't share this app, but the functionality still works. So Microsoft is working really hard on that everyone can use this stuff. To block it all together, all users from using Power Platform is nearly impossible. There are a few little ways, but they're kind of forbidden knowledge. Maybe I can include those links to those blog posts where you can actually, with a little trick, an API call basically, to still put a security role on the default environment. This is not allowed by Microsoft, but it still works. So, but I guess you will kind of lose your product warranty or something. I don't know. When Microsoft finds out, they will say, don't do that. I don't know. There are possibilities, but yeah. I would be really happy because I'm looking at the time here. I will just copy paste all those questions out and try to separate answer them in the end or afterwards. That would be really nice.
Would be also my suggestion. So we have in about 1 hour the Ask Me Anything question, and Michael will join us there as well. So if you have the time to stay in the call, I don't know, to your real name, Power Admin, then maybe you can come back there to your questions.
Otherwise, find me on the socials like LinkedIn, Twitter, X, or whatsoever, and just ping me there and let's have a talk. Would love that.